Welcome to the Wax Matric Podcast, a Terry Kath vinyl experience. I'm Michelle Sinclair. I'm a DJ, a producer, a longtime record collector, and your host. I have put together a 3-part series in which we get to explore the art of record collecting through my dad's record collection. In case you don't know who my dad is, and if you stumbled upon this podcast via your suggestion page or whatnot, my father was the lead guitarist of the band Chicago. He was also the founder of the band Chicago, and he was coined as one of the most underrated guitarists of the 70s. If you want to learn more about my dad and just, again, stumbled upon this page, you can visit terrykath.com. I made a documentary about him. Catch up, come back and watch us here. And in this podcast, each episode has 2 parts. The first part, we explore the art of record collecting, the love for vinyl, all of that and whatnot, with 2 very special guests. And in the second part, we reveal my dad's record collection, the long-awaited record collection for many of the fans, through various genres in each episode. So the first episode, we're going to discuss vinyl DNA, the rock section of my dad's record collection, and maybe just a little bit about the band Chicago. So let's introduce my very special guests. I have Kerry Brown, the owner of the established record store in LA, historically, important, I think, Licorice Pizza. But also you have a recording studio, Rolling Live Studios. Is that also the name of your record press?
No, the record press is Licorice Pizza.
Oh, the record
pressing.
Press. Okay, there you go.
Because ultimately, the Licorice Pizza, you know what that is, right?
Yes.
Like
the pizza.
Where it came from a long time ago.
Yeah.
It was like someone put together, it looks like licorice and a pizza.
I never really. No, I did not put that together before.
I was going to say, I'll be the idiot.
Like
we're talking about the little vinyl nut, and then it's pizza that looks like it's black, like licorice.
Pizza.
2 and 2 together is happening for both of us.
Of course. Right. Licorice Pizza.
Okay. The tastiest music in town.
Drops.
The tastiest. Is that your slogan? Because that's
now.
really good.
Yeah.
It is now? Okay. Also, my good friend, Luxxury, a.k.a. Blake. He is a DJ, producer, record collector, and the host of my now favorite podcast, One Song. If you don't know it, go check it out because it's so good. I'll leave you at that. I would, just to get us going, if you remember or know, just to kind of get it started, what's the last record or piece of vinyl you bought?
Well, I can tell you because I just came from Chicago, of all places. I was there for a very nerdy music conference called AMS, the American Musicological Society.
Oh, excuse me.
So you're excused. It's okay. On a break with a couple friends of mine, we went record store shopping, and I bought African Dub Volume 5 by Joe Gibbs, which is great. Great series. I collect dub vinyl recently. That's been my obsession. So I have 1 through 4 in the series.
No way.
I didn't have 5.
Were you excited to find it?
I was stoked because it's great. It's right at the moment, at the tipping point of 81, 82, right before digital sets in with reggae. So there's little digital sounds, but it's mostly analog and roots reggae sounding dub.
Cool.
And then what was the other record I bought? I bought that one. And then I had another haul, a late birthday gift that I took advantage of, where I went crazy at a MIMA in San Francisco. Also in the dub section, and I'm just going to pick what was my favorite out of those. Probably the best record I got out of that haul was Decibel, which is Dennis Bovell, who you probably know, because Dennis Bovell, another reggae producer, but he moved to England, and he produced The Slits, and
cool.
He was in a band called... I'm forgetting the name of his band, but he was right on that, with Don Letts, right on the line of Jamaica and punk rock in England in 77. So he's another hero.
So when's your DJ set of these records? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, coming soon. We should do it together. It'd be fun.
As an owner of a record store.
You could just kick me off on Joe, and we could do a whole podcast.
On Joe Gibbs?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a whole part of the record press
that
I'm going to Miami tomorrow. So this is to expand Licorice Pizza.
Yes.
And the facility that we're buying, was the facility where they did all of Joe Gibbs stuff, Tough Gong.
Okay.
For 40 years in Florida, right out of Jamaica, it was the American Press.
No way.
I am
That's a
painfully
whole lot.
silencing my line of questioning,
Yeah.
which I now have for you.
Right, there's a bunch of stuff that happens in the Joe world and the Tough Gong world and Marley world that
Wow.
changed the landscape of
obsessed.
music, including the Clash, which we talked about earlier.
Literally,
Which
gonna
I'm
have to have
excited about.
several-
The last
When he
record
says
that I
talked about
bought
earlier,
for my own listening.
this is before we started recording.
Yeah.
We literally had to stop talking just to get
There's going to
in
be
front of the
several
camera and the
spin-off
microphone.
podcasts from this podcast. One of which will be the Joe Gibbs
For sure.
pressing
the
stories.
history of that plant.
Yes. Oh my God.
The last record I bought for myself, I buy records every day
I
because
was
I own
gonna
a
say.
record store in Studio
What
City.
about, but like for you personally?
Sometimes I'll keep one for me.
Yeah.
The last two that I bought was for my wife. I bought the Stevie Nicks single. But for myself, the last record I bought was the Jack White unnamed record that he just put out. And I really think it's spectacular for those of you that are a fan of that world, the White Stripes in that world. It's probably the most like in that wheelhouse of his solo stuff. And I love the dude for everything he
haven't
does
listened to
there
that
with
yet.
his third man operation.
Which is also keeping record making alive. Thank God. And
for
record
keeping the torch
recording.
lit.
Yeah.
I mean, I like to model myself after his genius. What he's doing is great.
Nice.
Amazing. Because in this idea that the reason we're here is my dad's record collection, which I will say isn't the most extensive record collector's record collection. It definitely reflects what he was listening to at the time, as opposed to, some obscure albums he was out collecting. And in that sense, when you are a collector, my dad did collect motorcycles, guitars, guns, unfortunately, and, music in other ways. But when your collection defines you, which I think in this room would be music, I mean, why collect records? What's the love? Like, what drives you? I mean, you've made a career out of it, obviously.
I mean, the ones for me, like it's been great to stay in one career my entire life, music. I had one job before that. I was putting grips on golf clubs in Long Beach, California for a summer. And I realized I did not want to do that for a living. And I was in a band. I was able to stay in music my entire life, So they mean different things to me. When I started listening to music, it was the only way to listen to music, really. 8 tracks and cassettes rolled into the conversation, but I'm old enough to be like, everything was a vinyl purchase, and you would proudly display. Your collection was the music that you listened to and a reflection of you.
Interesting.
And it would be sometimes as I got into punk rock and still loved my Zeppelin and Pink Floyd, when my punk rock friends would come over, sometimes those records would go underneath the bed they wouldn't see it because there was a lot of peer pressure back then. Your collection was all, kids talk about social media pressure. The pressure then was like, what records do you have in your house?
That's
it defines
interesting.
you. Who you are, what click you're seeing.
Almost the first thing you'd check out if you went to someone's house. What records do you have?
It would be like,
who is this person? Right.
I don't like him anymore. He had some
exactly.
record.
You think about that. Do I want to go on date 2 or whatever? Like, do you see where they get that?
These external signifiers of someone's personality, their books, their records, their clothes, maybe their hair, obviously how they talk and what they say. But the record collecting is a part of it, and that's an interesting. It's not a relic of another era because we have different versions of it now. But there's kind of a middle step, because I'll say that I collected records as a kid growing up in the 80s. And then there's this moment where CDs came in, and then a little bit later, digital comes in. So there's a big gap in my collection because I stopped buying records at whatever year that was, in the mid-90s.
Yeah, they kind of stopped making records, vinyl records in the 90s. Like a lot of great alternative rock records never saw vinyl until now. It's pretty wild.
Right.
They're making a big comeback. Yeah.
And then in the pandemic, I started buying them again because I think I'm still working out with my therapist exactly why, but something about the tangibility of them, something about them being, because that was when my dub obsession came in the form. I was reading a book basically about dub by Lloyd Bradley. It's really good, called Bass Culture. And I wanted to hear what I was reading about, but there was something not quite satisfying enough about doing it digitally, because you lose all of the meta information, the experience of looking at the liner notes, the experience of holding it, flipping it around. As you're listening, your brain is imprinted with the imagery. Your brain is imprinted with the information.
Yeah.
And that isn't what takes place when you have access to everything, which is wonderful.
Yeah, when you're
with
streaming
Spotify
and you're
YouTube.
like, next song, Google, I hate this
It's great.
song.
You get
play the
more,
next one.
but you get less out of each of those listens, I would say. So to me,
Agreed.
vinyl is a richer experience for every moment of every song that you're listening to.
Right. It's tangential, experiential, and all of those. I have headphones and stare at Pink Floyd poster while trying to escape from 7th, 8th grade was a great way out.
You know
for
every
me.
square inch of that music, as do I, as we all do for the vinyl that we've obsessed over.
And like for me, I'm a record collector because I loved music. When I started DJing, I mean, that's what you DJ'd on. You DJ'd on vinyl. So I just was obsessively...
Well, you were DJing before the CD era?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
You said 80s, I'll say 90s. Just right into college, got turntables and would DJ all the college parties. At that time, I was really into like hip hop, R&B, funk and soul. And I obviously loved my rock and punk. So it was like all about smashing that all together and just, carrying 3 or 4 crates to
breaking your back,
to the club to try to get through it. And for me, I was a record collector for the music. I didn't care about, oh my God, it's the first press or it's new, it's not old. Like people got really obsessed with that, especially if you were doing funk and soul and older things. If I could get the
authenticity,
music, the authenticity,
the rarity,
I didn't care if there was a white label that had like all these different songs on it.
Right.
And it had,
that's convenient.
Yeah. I was like, great. That's like at least 30 minutes of my set throughout the night.
50 records in a crate, you've just reduced your, your back breaking.
That's when greatest hits really come in handy.
Yeah. They're fine. I'm anti the snobbery, the anti-gatekeeping of greatest hits not counting. Yeah, they count.
Or for a DJ, you'd get like these weird remixes that would come out on these like weird white labeled pressings, and then I'm like, oh cool, like a remix of Queen, and like a AC/DC would be like the rock remixes.
I remember that one, the Rick Rubin remix of like what do you call it, We Will Rock You, which is terrible, but like I remember it was exciting that it existed.
Yeah, because you could like throw it out there and be like, oh my God,
Well,
now
Rick does come into play big time in all of this, though. We're talking about like the cultures and I mean the Beastie Boys and Luscious Jackson, all those offshoots of that vinyl space. Those guys are legit in that world, and it kind of kept it alive and brought it into middle America, honestly.
Yeah, it's true, because it was they're white dudes taking practices from black music and legitimizing them for what it's worth. Yeah,
for sure.
Big deal.
Interesting. I think that this can kind of lead us into part 1, which we're calling Lead-In Grooves. In part 1 of every episode, we'll discuss the art of record collecting through various topics. And in this one, we're going to talk a little bit about the vinyl DNA so that even the record hobbyists can kind of know what they're talking about. Because even for me, even though I was a record collector, like I said, I wasn't a super nerd. So things like calling this podcast the Wax Matric Podcast is definitely like a more music nerdy or vinyl nerdy.
A little nudge.
A
little
nudge,
wink
yeah.
To our Discogs
but it sounds like
friends.
it's star Keanu Reeves.
And it stars Keanu Reeves playing me. So I just thought that we'd kind of like go through a record. I'm going to pull out one of my dad's records.
We know that one.
The White Album. And I just pulled this one out because I thought that we're also in the rock section, but because this record, I read online one copy that was Ringo Starr's copy sold for over $700,000.
Wow.
Which is crazy.
It is crazy.
I mean, I don't know if that's because he owned it or he had, one of the first pressings. I don't know. But like,
it's probably it's all of it,
Yeah.
It was like number 4 or something.
Yeah. And like, I don't know. So what I'm going to do is
isn't there like a number, a serial number on
Yeah,
on
that's what I'm saying. So what's the serial number? We can start with the Wax Matric.
There's all these different numbers, and this is a part of. Thank you. I don't know if I get the light right here, but this is part of the business that some people know about and get into, and some people.
The run out groove.
Don't,
Sketches.
There's what they call the run out groove, the dead wax,
which is at the end of the record.
Just right, you can see it when they're cutting the record from the tapes. Back then only.
Yeah, you can see it.
You get it just right. You can see they would everything was going to vinyl back then. That was the delivery for music,
Oh, so
vinyl record.
On this record, we have that
Sometimes they have
number.
little messages too. Little Kilroy was stereotype.
Yeah,
So-
some people would inscribe little messages. Zeppelin has famous for that.
Oh, really?
Little Easter eggs.
Yeah,
for
they
the
would write
fans.
little messages
And who would write that?
I think
though?
there was
And
a-
is it actually you're scratching it in?
The band would write it usually, and then it was the person cutting the lacquer that would go to plating that would inscribe it typically. But you could go there in that process.
It's so
and
bloody hard to
get the little stylus and write your name or initial. And
Yeah.
some of these cutting engineers were so famous people would look for just that record
Right,
that was cut by that
initials.
No
engineer.
way.
Little Easter eggs they would call them now or whatever, but hidden in
So
there.
that
And it's the end of the record. It's called the dead wax that you
Which is
need
the
to
end
see
of the
it
record
through.
when
And
it
this
And we're
comes
is
moving
out.
them around just because it's really hard to see.
No, it's hard
Yeah,
to
I
get
the light
the
exactly.
light just right.
And we need our glasses.
A lot
But
of
you can
people
go on
don't even know
Discogs.
that the center. Yeah, exactly. Discogs. You could put in that number. It'll tell you everything. The label is not glued on. It's it's part of the process when it's heated up. The PVC is
Interesting.
heated up.
Oh, so the
label's
center label-
put on the top and the bottom of what looks like a hockey puck. That's then with a lot of pressure. It's hot. It's like a panini press in a way. It stamps out a record. It's stamped. There's a stamper on the A side and B side.
Right.
And that's where that information is held, whatever's in the matrix.
And then when
Number
people are
there.
looking for like original pressings, this is what determines the number in the dead wax space.
Yeah. And then
is
there's
the
like
matrix
you're
number.
supposed to, and hopefully because there's a huge resurgence in vinyl right now, massive.
Yeah.
And everyone's able to afford even like a punk rock band. At $1,300, you can get 100 records and hit the road. It's not bad. Mark it up and make a little bit of money on tour. You're not going to make it's more money than you'll ever make streaming. Period. Whatever you sell, 100
Yes.
records, you're going to make more money in streaming. Different podcasts probably. But what streaming's done to this industry. But as kids make records now, or people make records now, I hope they keep the matrix alive, because you
The
need to
existence of a
track
matrix?
stuff. You know, you don't like that was the way that you would keep all the files for the information of that historical document,
Which is
of
the number
captured
here.
spirit that you have in your hand. There would be the first pressing, second pressing. Usually, if it's a repressing, they're supposed to carve in RE for repress, and then the real experts can find out usually what pressing plant made that record, because there's pressing plants all over the
When you
world.
say carbon RE, what's that?
What's that?
Did you say carbon RE?
They'll carve in.
Oh, carve in. Sorry.
Usually,
I was like,
sometimes
there's more
it's
carbon.
sometimes it's stamped, but usually it's hand scribed a lot of times.
That's wild.
with the
so
the nail, basically, a sharp, like a stylus, but
This
it's just
one
a
says-
metal point, and they would write RE for a repress. This is probably one of the most.
RE for the repress. Got it. Yeah, so this one's 1-101-H-70.
Yeah, so
That's
that
what
probably.
that one says.
Have you taken these to Discogs yet?
No.
Yeah, you could
Yeah.
type it in.
That's what
Just-
you can-
yeah,
you should
that's
do
the
that
way to
next.
do it.
I've
But
seen,
that,
like-
your dad having that was probably when it was it was the first week of it coming
Yeah.
out. I would
Carefully
imagine.
give this back to you.
That's probably as OG as it gets.
Yeah, and then what about this number? There's other numbers on here.
Well, they did a certain thing
Like-
with there's catalog numbers.
The
usually.
catalog numbers.
And that's different than the matrix number, because the matrix number tracks the pressing part of it.
Right.
The catalog number tracks the release in the catalog of the label.
Right, so
Does
you
that
might
make
have
sense?
one,
Okay.
that album might have been pressed in multiple cities with multiple presses by even multiple people in multiple years.
Right.
And it's still the same catalog number, but all of
Right.
the different, you can tell what year it is and where it was made. And that's the fun of Discogs. You sit on the couch and like, this was in Michigan or whatever the actual states are. And people like nerd out and geek out about it. It matters. Some of them are better pressed than others. People will, in the
Interesting,
comments,
yeah.
be like, I got this and it's flat and this one is whatever. It's, the bass is way too hot or whatever it is. But there are differences.
There's so many
It matters.
reasons for that.
Yeah.
From the actual, some places use a lot of recycled vinyl, and which is good for the environment. The best
So,
sounding vinyls, pure virgin
recycled
vinyl, they
vinyl-
say, but other people, people dispute that. No,
Recycled
adding a little
vinyl is
clear
like
to it makes it
literally-
sound better. Other people say.
Is that literally taking a vinyl and then like an old record, or
so-
vinyl meaning the material?
So when you're at the pressing side, every record that's made, there's a little extra. So they squish this record. It's really cool to see that process. You should come to the plant. It's
I
not
would
far from here.
love that.
And-
that should be our promo video.
and then on there's like at the final step when the record's still hot, in our case, because the machine that we use, other places do it later in this process, but we stamp our record, and then the machine, the SMT 1500 for those that get that deep, cuts the little extra off, and that drops into a trash can. You can regrind that material and reuse it.
Interesting.
It's like olive oil.
Yeah. You can reuse it. You want to mix it with new material, otherwise it gets too dirty and doesn't sound good.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. Well, I find that all very interesting. I think unless you have anything else you might want to input on the
Beatles,
the music nerd vinyl side.
It's like collecting so different for every person. I think at the end the takeaway. Yeah. My collection came from, it was just the music that I liked. It became my collection. I never collected for value like that. I just collected for what I liked. But other people do collect for value.
I'm the same way. I'm really only thinking about my experience sitting on the couch listening to it, knowing that, of course, in the back of my mind, someday my son will take over my Discogs, log in.
You get the $700,000 white album.
Wait. I want to back up there. Wait, Discogs login. So you can log into Discogs.
So Discogs is like a crowdsource. It's like Wikipedia for record collecting. So what's charming about it is that you'll have iPhone pictures of someone putting their record on the floor, but this is it's really comprehensive. Like there are records that aren't on there, but most records kind of seem to be on there. Like even the different pressings and and all the matrices. And so people will take pictures of their, the poster that came with the original version. And then you're like, oh, I kind of want to get that earlier version than I got, because I got one the other day. It was actually a repressing. It was like a Zamrock compilation, but I got the repress that doesn't have the poster. So now I'm like, should I take it back and get the poster? Anyway, you can really go deep on the nerding out.
Velvet Underground got me with the banana and the peel.
Right.
The
zipper.
There was that stuff that outside of it was in the art too.
Oh, no, is it Sticky Fingers that has the zipper?
Sticky Fingers has the zipper. Super cool. Yeah. Alice Cooper did cool stuff back then with all kinds of wild things with Shep.
New Order Blue Monday famously has the die cut where they lost money, apparently. I don't know if that's a real... that's the rumor that it cost them 2p more than it did they earned
There's
back.
all kinds of crazy. Like Pearl Jam's first mix has like 1,000 copies of 10 out there that was like different mixes than the rest, and they almost got dropped, and they remixed the record. But those first 1,000
are super rare,
or like
and
the
people
Butcher,
want them.
Baby
the Butcher, I was
Beetle,
say the
was
Butcher
a legendary one,
which my dad sold. Apparently, we found out after the fact. You must know Village Music in Mill Valley.
I've seen one. Exactly.
My dad, when he moved to LA, sold his collection. He offered it to me first, and at the time I was in that middle phase where I wasn't back into vinyl yet, and I was hundreds of miles away, and I was like, no, it's too much. Where would I put it? And later he found out that when he sold it to Village Music, they're like, you know what you got here, don't you? And it was a Butcher cover. It
That's
was
like the Holy Grail.
That is a Holy Grail. And my dad had one. We had it the whole time.
Wow. I mean, I think we'll take this energy and we'll segue back into my dad's record collection.
Yes, let's focus
we'll go
on
from
Terry
your
Kath.
to my
Open it here for Terry Kath.
Part 2 is of each episode is Terry's Hall. This episode's the rock genre.
Is that a pun on Terry Hall?
You know Terry Hall?
No.
From the specials?
Oh.
I was thinking about that too.
Terry's Hall.
Terry Hall is his last name.
Yeah, we assumed that was a pun. It's a pun
really?
from
It's
now
a pun,
on. Yes.
It's for us,
we'll
it's a pun.
take it now.
It's punny to us.
It's a pun to us.
Punny
We
to
liked
us. Oh, no. Okay, so I was going to say before we get into it that we're not going to play the records, so you're not going to hear them.
Okay.
But if you go to terrykath.com, I've put together a playlist. It'll link you to Spotify or Apple Music, and you can listen to them before, after, or during while we speak. The other interesting thing about some of these records is I couldn't find them on streaming. So I'll link someplace a YouTube video, because YouTube does have them all, because people just will play them. So as we get into it, surprisingly, this is the smallest section of my dad's collection, which is funny because Chicago is, considered a rock band in a way. And I would note that a lot of his records in this whole collection is from about the 70s till he passed in 78. So it really reflects where he is at, or what he was listening to kind of while he's already touring with Chicago and already established a certain sound. So maybe he's developing where he wants to go, or because he sadly passed, at 32, and was planning to do a solo album and was planning apparently to leave Chicago. So where was he going with that? So this is kind of like the smallest of his collection. You will probably know most of this stuff. So what I'll do is I'm going to pull them out. I'm going to hand them to you so you can display them to the fans that have been waiting a very long time to see some of these records.
But with a record here.
We'll start with the Beatles. So we did have the we went through the White Album, obviously very iconic, but this Rubber Soul album is important because it has the song Michelle on it, which I was named after.
Oh,
that's beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
That is beautiful.
My mom did say that they listened to the Beatles a lot.
Yeah.
Right.
And were you, by the way, just a moment ago, were you saying that this record collection, I mean, so far you're pulling out Beatles records from before, but are you saying, was there a period where he was buying records before 78 or he had stopped before 78?
So that's what's interesting is we're not seeing anything before the 70s. We're not seeing what he was into in his teens.
Oh, I see.
Right? They were a garage band. They were, so like, where are those records? I don't know. Did my grandparents end up with them? Did they get lost in the mix? Does my uncle have them? I think
was he buying records in like 76, 77 though? Like,
I would think so.
Okay.
I mean, maybe he was just so busy. You know, it was like in a band. It's like you kind of, you know, it was.
Yeah,
you're not had time to even.
It's more like, what are you listening to?
Yeah.
Like, this album came out. Let's listen to the Beatles album. I think.
I love this the new improved stereo, because it's also available in mono. But this is the stereo, so that was a big thing. So going from mono to stereo.
Okay,
it's
so
like black and white to color in a way.
Oh, interesting. What would that?
From a single speaker source of all music to left and right really opened up things. And
interesting.
The early recordings, you'll hear the drums and bass are on one side, and on the other, on the left side, let's say, and the guitars and the backing vocals are on the right. And if you lose one side, the songs, a lot of Beatles songs were like that. You'll lose the rhythm section.
Beatles album over here. Yeah. We've got
in the early stuff.
If you've ever listened in a room closer to one speaker than the other, you'll notice this
it's
phenomenon.
Yeah.
Obviously,
the one.
These are all very iconic. Wait, this one.
The Sgt. Pepper. I mean, just the best album cover.
Yeah.
That album cover never gets old, you know? Still hunt. I mean, I don't know about you, but as a kid, I would just stare at the artwork in the album with the headphones and just disappear. And there were a lot more gatefolds back then than there are now.
And I think that one had a little thing that came out with them in it. Yeah. Maybe I'm misremembering that, or it had some special thing.
It might have had like
in addition to the lyrics.
A little like thing that's not in here, like a card or something.
I have some memory of that, very vague. But absolutely staring at it, looking at the lyrics.
It's just good to see it again. I haven't actually picked up this Sgt. Pepper's in a while.
At a certain point, you're starting to pay attention to liner notes and who did what, like songwriting credits and musicianship.
This one has a book inside, a little.
Yeah. I mean, how cool. Love songs.
This is the ASMR section of the podcast.
I mean, this is cool. This is like a whole lyric sheet for. There's your lyrics for your name right there.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
What year did this one come out? Because in my mind, this feels more like modern. Like a modern compilation. The Love Songs one.
Which one did we say? Oh, the Love Songs. But this also has Michelle on it.
Okay. I mean, that's the original. Where it came out. But then there was like the
Beatles
blue
weren't
and the
around
red.
that long. It's crazy how much they did. They seem like a band that was around for 40 years, but they were around. You know, they did all that in a less than 10-year period of time.
Whatever. Yeah.
So early 70s, they were already into repackaging, and they were all in their solo careers.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
You know what I mean? Like that, it was like a wild thing because still to this day, I can't believe they were only around as a band. Yeah.
But
the phenomenon of
been,
what they covered in such a short period is insane.
Well, this one's like stereo. Like they're bragging stereo. Like it's like you can also get it in mono. So that would have been, when
Capitol's new improved full dimensional stereo sound better than stereo has ever sounded before.
That's its own rabbit hole of different types of stereo where some of them are
and
fake.
There's literally, it goes on and on. There's there's a whole...
It was a little bit VHS or beta at the time, like which version of stereo would win.
Well, what happens is in the early wide stereo mono, right, there would be a button on the old mixing board so you can, and every studio had this Ortone small, crappy speaker, like what it would sound like on the cheapest car radio in mono. Mm-hmm. But there's a volume difference in vocals and such when you pan and up the middle. So if something was truly recorded in mono, this whole debate is you can't really back then, everything was committed to one track, two tracks. It was like four tracks. The Beatles did them. It's crazy with what they did sonically with 4 tracks. 8 tracks.
Yeah. I don't think they got to. They might have, but like 4 tracks. Certainly, Sgt. Pepper, because I have the multi-tracks. There are only 4 tracks, and it's insane that it's Sgt. Pepper.
My friend Alan Parsons, who became the amazing engineer and legendary.
I want more name dropping because you're in the right crowd for it.
A lot of history there.
Yeah.
His day one first job at Abbey Road, because the assistant engineer called in sick, was with the Beatles in Studio 2, and they were like, "We love this guy," and they recommended him to Pink Floyd, and the rest is kind of history there.
Imagine
that was his day one of the job.
You're the call-in for the day, and then you just get.
He's got a great story. He lives in Santa Barbara. Oh. You should have him come in.
Oh my gosh! I feel like we have a spin-off.
That sounds like another project,
right?
If you will. The Alan Parsons project.
Right. Thank you.
Okay.
We'll be here all night.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the only Eagles record I have in this collection. And I like to think like this record and the Santana record. Also the only Santana record. I kind of like to think about these. Here, I'll pass these.
Yeah.
You know what? I can't touch the Eagles record for legal reasons.
Really?
Yeah. You don't know about my story with the Eagles?
No.
I mean, I can't even say the name. Please bleep that out. I didn't say Eagle.
Wait, are you like... Are you not allowed to stand in within 50 feet of the... Okay,
DH, did that cease and desist for my remix a few years ago.
Uh-oh.
So,
So in case
no
you
love
don't...
lost between me and DH.
In case you don't know, Luxxury, a.k.a. Blake, does these really, really amazing remixes of well-known songs.
But they are blasphemous, and in this case, the blasphemy was felt by Mr. H, who ceased and desisted me.
Okay, so you can't hold that one, so I'll hold it. But these 2 records are the only ones here, and I feel like one of the things about it is he knew them. He knew he was hanging out with Joe Walsh, and he was. So maybe like they were like, "Oh, here, man, here's a new album." Is my thought.
I can touch it.
You can touch it. And they hung out with Santana and things like that. So I was thinking maybe these albums.
It says produced. I just looked at that one because I haven't really opened that one up and gone down the liner notes of it and everything. But it's produced by Santana musicians, which I thought was cool.
And it's got half of Journey on it too. Greg Rowley and Neil Schon.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, back then it was like crazy. Everybody played on everybody's records. Like Mick Fleetwood played on a lot of records. Like he's playing drums on Werewolves of London. He's because he used to work out of a studio here before he met Lindsay and Stevie at a big recording studio here in the Valley.
Oh, Greg Errico from Sly's on this one too, playing some tambourines.
See, and that's what's cool too. Like
that's
we
all
don't
San Francisco
really...
too. It's a San Francisco scene. It was like kind of
interesting.
Connections are there.
Well, yeah, because some of the early gigs that Chicago played before they were known, it was like they were opening up for like Santana or opening up for Jimi Hendrix, and they were just like the new guys in town.
Can I ask a question about
Hendrix? Well, your dad
Hendrix?
was such a legendary guitar player. I mean,
we got to get into that.
Yeah,
Let's get into Hendrix.
Okay,
again,
perfect timing.
Strangely enough, the only Hendrix album
Kismet
that's in this collection. I'm going to pull this off.
So can I ask you? Be the interviewer for just a second about your dad.
Yeah.
What is there a story that you have behind the legendary Hendrix saying that Terry Kath is his favorite guitar player?
So, okay, the interesting thing about that comment that Jimi Hendrix said that my dad was his favorite guitar player is everyone seems to have their own version of the story depending who you ask.
Everyone was there.
Everyone was there, or everyone was like, oh, afterwards Jimmy said, hey man, which, some of the players of the band Chicago were like, oh, Jimmy told me, and blah, blah, blah. But my favorite is my mom's story, which is, they did end up going on tour with Jimi Hendrix in the beginning when they were still CTA, Chicago Transit Authority. And my mom's favorite story is that they got in a limousine together and they just couldn't talk to each other because they were both in awe of each other. And they rode the whole limousine ride as you did because you took limousines back then.
That's like adorable.
Right? And so they just didn't say anything to each other the whole way. I thought that was very cute. The other one too, because a lot of these stories actually didn't really make it in my documentary because the way you have to edit stuff. When I interviewed Peter Cetera, he had some great stories about those times. And he was like, your dad and Jimi Hendrix, it was a hot mess. They were like, oh, let's just come to my room after the show. And he was like, oh gosh, it was just party central.
Shenanigans.
Yeah.
Okay. Rock star stuff of the era.
The other story from
the Shep Gordon period of it all.
Yeah. And I think my mom was saying that there was this admiration. They were enamored with each other, and that it was, obviously short-lived in the sense of the, like you said, rock and roll lifestyle and everyone being so busy. When did Jimi Hendrix pass? Because that was also
69?
kind of...
I don't know if that's right, though. It feels like 69.
Oh, no, 70. Let's see.
Put it in the comments. We don't have we were not connected to the internet right now. But
I'm not going to go get roasted for it, by getting it wrong. But probably, I think he did the Rainbow Bridge Maui show in 73.
Yes.
Oh, he made it into the early 70s? That's
I think because what happened, I don't think Chicago had
If this is all wrong, let's research it and edit it all out.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly.
If it's right, you can keep it.
Jim Guercio, who's their producer, had a story about them all being at the Isle of Wight.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Together. And that was the story he told me, was that, Jimi Hendrix was walking around like, oh, take this pill. And Guercio's like, Terry, don't take that pill that Jimmy gave you. And then apparently he passed away soon after.
Oh,
That's Guercio's story. So again, it's interesting. Like, people all have their different stories about it. In making my documentary, I really tried to reach out to anyone in the Jimi Hendrix estate or camp.
Did you find anybody?
No one had anything. Well, first of all, no one really responded.
Yeah.
And anyone that did was like, I don't have anything to say about that. So it continues to be.
It's a wonderful, beautiful, ambiguous mystery.
It continues to be that.
That's better. Maybe it's better that way.
Yeah. And again, in the record collection, this being the only record that...
I don't even know that. Is that like a bootleg or something?
So first of all, this I could not find on any streaming platform.
Yeah, it's got to be like a bootleg.
You can find it on YouTube. People have they just play the record and record themselves playing the record. But the interesting thing on this record is it's mainly instrumental guitar.
It looks like the corner's
really
cut out.
funky,
is the corner cut out or is that just
very
corn?
jazzy?
Someone took a bite out of it.
Yeah.
Maybe.
But it's not like a cutout promotional thing.
I mean, I've
I
never
don't
heard
know.
of the Trip record label. I doubt Jimi Hendrix was legally bound.
Oh, this sounds like something that's coming out of
This
Japan
feels
or something.
pretty booty.
Yeah, Japan and there was like a whole store in Japan that was all bootlegs of Beatles.
And to your point, it's all, I don't recognize these song titles, so maybe these were like unreleased demos or something like that. But it's interesting that he has it. That's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's mainly instrumental, like kind of funky guitar.
Maybe Hendrix was like this. Here, Terry.
Yeah,
it's the only one.
Let's add to this.
One day this will be like Ringo's White Album.
Yeah.
Let's add to the rumors of their relationship.
I've heard that Jimi Hendrix gave your dad that copy of that record, so it's worth a lot of money.
Yeah.
And anyone watching this first...
this is that record.
Yeah, this is that record. This is that one. Yeah. How fortunate for you, the viewer, to be able to buy it right now on eBay. The link below.
We're going to go live and auction it off.
Yeah. I mean,
I was also thinking it's
not
interesting.
Even a sleeve. It's like there's a lot of mystery.
It's interesting that the way that, most records are like this, and then you pull it out right side up. But if you look at that, you have to turn it. That's right side up.
It's designed for you to pick it up and for it to fall out the bottom and land on the floor and shatter.
SLT 00862.
Yeah, right after
That's
we
about
record,
what we
should
get.
look this up.
Put that in
curious.
Discog and see what comes out.
Sometimes Discog says this is not allowed to be on the platform, and that's when you know it's definitely a boot.
They do that?
Yeah.
Oh, because they don't want to be associated with bootleg, or bootlegs are just okay.
Because that was such a big, huge, massive world, and probably come back with the resurgence. So probably everyone should look for that.
When you say Japan bootleg,
well, they used to just. I remember the first time I went to Japan, Tokyo. It was like 1994.
How it comes out the bottom?
Yeah, it's just like
that's a terrible choice. Yeah, that's a dumb decision.
Okay.
That kind of right there. Something was upside down and backwards with that one,
and nobody fixed it.
Well,
someone was in a hurry.
This was also in there, and I love these ones because they are Caribou Ranch promotional records.
Yeah.
Which, if you don't know what Caribou Ranch is, that was Jim Guercio, who produced and managed Chicago, took all the money he made and bought acres and acres of land in Colorado and made this fabulous recording studio that so many wonderful people recorded their albums there. And then there's things like this that I find in my dad's record collection. This also, I don't think I couldn't find on Spotify or Apple Music or anything like that, but eerily sounds like a Chicago album produced by Jim Guercio. Makes me wonder if some of these records, they were trying to kind of recreate that sound, or was there that kind
What
of
is this
jazz
band
rock.
called?
I like the way that this one is literally demonstration not for sale imprint on the label when it was pressed, as opposed to like a cutout or, you know what I mean? Like it's like this record's not for sale.
Yeah.
Like it says on the label, which is pretty dope.
Yeah.
Like a lot of times they'd cut out for promotional for record stores or radio stations of the record that was for sale and just cut it on the cover.
I've never heard of this band. It's called, is it Gerard?
Yeah.
Gerard.
And it's very Caribou Ranch. Everything about the branding.
It's a combination, but it's got a little bit of the Chicago style logo in a way.
That's what I'm saying. Like it has an eerily.
Let's talk about how famous the band became with the logo and not even like a recognizable
It's
covers of.
true.
I mean, I feel like they're. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like by far the biggest and first to do
What I got
that.
here. I got one.
Like there. I mean, you know what I mean, like that. But as a kid growing up, everybody had Chicago records. It was crazy. It wasn't just regional. Like L.A. My family was L.A. They had it. You know.
Yeah.
Like, but where they didn't have other like Bruce Springsteen or whatever. Like music, Eagles were very. Not to go to there, but they were very like West Coast, where Springsteen as a kid was very East Coast and very regional. Chicago,
Interesting. Everywhere.
was just at least through North America. I don't know about global at the time. In North America, everyone was able to resonate with Chicago. Like it was weird. It was like they were rock, but they were jazz. They were everything, and they were identified as a logo though.
Right.
You know,
it's a really distinctive logo, right?
And every album had
The number.
again promotional, not for sale.
And also they were all numbered, right? Just like
Yes.
almost like Zeppelin, except they kept going after 4 to like
CTA,
17,
the
18,
first
whatever.
one, which they changed their name after that, Chicago Transit Authority. I think they had to because that was literally the name of the
the
transit.
CTA.
And then after that, it was 2, 3, 4, 5, and then every album cover. I think they got more elaborate. You know, there's the
They
one
got
that looks like
deep in it.
chocolate. There's the one that looks like
and they
money.
were weird.
You can,
Like they had
feel
always
it.
had dimension to them, kind of in a weird way.
Yeah.
Like they felt like they were 3D.
Yeah.
lot of
Funny
times.
enough, I don't know why, but in what I've brought here Chicago-wise is I have this one, and then I have the ones after my dad passed. So, like, also,
It's
my
such a
mom, they
different
must
band.
have given
It
this
is
to my
such
mom
a different
because it's
band.
also, but this famously has Street Player on it.
Well, it must be a compilation then. Isn't that from
No,
like
that's
from like
so,
Oh, I'm thinking
so
of Saturday
right-
in the Park. Never mind.
yeah. Right after my dad passed, they got it together and did this album, and wasn't, I don't think, very accepted because it had a very disco feel to it, which was a very
Well, I
big
think
departure.
that was kind of the thing. I remember that period, Chicago. There were big songs, and they sounded
That's the
like
new guitarist
super
with the
produced
hair.
and
With my hair,
Yeah.
with the Mugatu, we share kind of a look with Will Ferrell. And,
It's wild because they did go there. Like everybody did. It was weird. Everybody did an '80s record. The Stones, Rod Stewart. Everybody had that record that sounded like that
Kiss.
period of time. Yeah, yeah.
and sometimes
Oh,
it
I have
worked.
the chocolate
Yeah.
one.
The Kiss
There you go.
record's great.
I mean, it worked for
I was waiting for
Springsteen,
11. It was
right?
insanely good.
Bruce did it. And
What is Bruce's disco record? I can't think of it.
I think it. Well, I think that all of that, Born in the USA and all that, has that feel. To me, that sounds like disco for Bruce, and it was just
I have the chocolate one. This one opens like a chocolate bar.
Imagine having a label with a budget to let you do that. It doesn't happen anymore. I mean, they're out there. Maybe Jack might
love
do
it also.
Maybe you would do
I
that.
do love that
Promotion,
album
not
cover. I'm big. I'm
great.
big on the good album covers.
Totally. Beautiful
Yeah,
artwork.
I mean, they definitely, I think in recent years, you see them
I
a
feel like
lot.
this had a wrapper too at some point.
Oh, wow.
Like one
I
issue. I feel like
wonder.
it did.
A silver wrap.
Look at
We need to
just
go
that-
into Discogs.
that's
Aluminum foil.
Great. Whoever can see whatever the good angle is, right? Pan and scan. But,
There's a whole storyline.
right when they used to think about the art and all this for a year out. For
It's
the
all
record.
conceptual.
Yeah. It takes a long time to make a record, months, compared to
We got
minutes with
Lagier
digital.
in there.
There's so much to like deconstruct here too. It's like it's very American, huge American
that's way
symbolism.
down
We
I
got
mean, what's the
outlaw,
political statement
very
going on?
outlaw.
Yeah.
Chicago, and it had its own politics and its own. I never even heard of an alderman until I moved to Chicago. I didn't even know what that was. It's got its own way of kind of doing
Right.
America in Chicago.
1976. That's the year I was
And, the
born.
Windy
All-
City comes from politics, not from the wind.
I was gonna say, yeah, that's like people mistake it for the
Right.
temperature, but
Yeah.
it's the blabbermouthiness of the politicians, right? Another band I've never heard of,
Yeah.
Rhinestones. What is that?
Again, couldn't find on any streaming platforms.
What's going on here?
Rhinestones. See the liner notes. We got.
Have
Also-
we listened to this one yet? We got to
Yes.
crank
No.
this one.
Also,
Names I've
again,
never heard
very
before.
similar sound to Chicago.
Okay.
And so it made me wonder if these were people my dad knew. Like, I feel like
It
a
could
lot
be
of
a
these,
local
except
band,
for the
like-
Beatles,
Right.
like a lot of
Just
these
Sunshine.
guys are people he might have come across or knew. And he was like, oh, let me check out your album. We're kind of coming out in the same,
Where'd your dad live? At the like what part?
in Hollywood, in Glendale,
Yeah.
California.
You know.
Well, I mean, I think after CTA,
Like when he would have, yeah, like
they came to LA. I know they recorded one of the albums in New York. Again, fans, put it in the comments and let us know. But they moved to Hollywood and then they kind of just lived here.
so. This was this is 20th Century Records, 8544 Sunset Boulevard, Los Angeles,
There you
California.
go.
And it's a promo copy. It could have been somebody your dad knew. It could have
Yeah.
just been like check it out or friends or
Yeah,
they have horns.
yeah. It's
see.
a very
They
soft,
look like they
look
would
like-
sound
yeah,
like.
exactly.
Yeah.
it's a very soft rock pop jazz,
Yeah.
very kind of similar. So I don't know if this was like maybe after Chicago's success, they're trying to be like, oh, let's see if we can ride the coattails of this and start a new. But like, I think that we
Yeah.
just needed Chicago to do that. And that
There's
was it.
look, I didn't recognize a single name on it. It doesn't mean
No,
that they
I don't
weren't
either.
stars in their own right, but there's also a lot of artists that come and go and they don't
Yeah.
ever quite make that single never gets, past the top 200
Well,
or into the top 200.
I mean, nothing personal, but
Yeah.
I think they were going after the Chicago thing. Maybe they didn't
Right.
nail the logo.
yeah. Yeah.
Well, also it's interesting in this concept of what you're saying. It's like you put out, we're a new band, we're going to make records and try to get those out there, where now literally anybody can be like, I'm going to put my song on Spotify.
Right.
And there's some crazy estimate of how many people put their
Yeah, I don't
It's
even
a
know how you
ridiculous
calculate
number.
it.
records up there every day. And that may really come and go at some point, where we're going to still have the Rhinestones album.
Right?
So maybe go press your record. Okay.
The cool shit never even hit Spotify.
Yeah,
you know?
right?
Like, who knows?
This isn't
But,
even
yeah.
on Spotify.
That
These,
could be an amazing
again,
record. I can't wait to hear it.
All of these are not on Spotify. Here's another one, not on Spotify. This is kind of my final one I want to
Ooh,
show.
is that a picture disc?
Yes.
Citadel.
And you can totally take it out and have a
Yeah,
look
Citadel.
at it.
That spacey artwork to me, well, actually, I was going to say that it must be post Star Wars. It must be after 77, but it also could be before that. The style of illustration, I don't think dates it quite so much. It could be like an earlier era. But I'm
Check
curious,
out
what year
this.
is it? Is it 77, 78? Post Star Wars?
In my notes,
I'm going to go
I
with
have,
post Star Wars because it's called Star Castle.
Oh,
Is it 77?
produced by my friend Roy Thomas Baker.
Oh, damn. Then it's got to
It's
be
an
good.
RTB production. Let's
Fucking,
hear this.
He did Night at the Opera by Queen. He did The Cars. This guy's a
Yeah.
monster. He did Motley Crue records even.
He did like
No
all
way.
massive Queen guy,
He's
like
the
a
best.
legend.
And another weird curly blonde guy like me.
it's a theme.
Yeah, it's a theme today. What year do you see a year on it?
A year on it.
I have in my
Okay.
notes. I have
Let's do that.
1977.
Oh, you have a year.
That's what
Okay,
I'm saying.
man.
I said it was
Well,
77.
I know
'cause it's so
we
Star
can
Warsy.
get the scoop from Roy about
Look
this
how
one.
pretty.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Give him a call.
Yeah.
Give him a
Can
jingle.
we do a phone in? Dial in.
Do a phone
You still see him drive around his like yellow Rolls Royce with RTB on the license plate.
So cool.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I like. These were, I just found it so interesting that this one, the Rhinestones, Gerard, and the Jimi Hendrix were all things I could not find on a streaming platform.
They came and they went. It happened a lot in those
Yeah.
days.
And
Or no one knows who owns the masters. All kinds of crazy
Yeah.
things.
The
I
vinyl
think,
is the artifact of it. Sorry, I didn't
right.
mean that.
No, it's
Yeah.
in capturing the spirit and all this stuff. But I think the future of all of this, just throwing a little plug for it. I want to see it head, and I think it's heading that way. Is that if artists decide not to give everything away for free on Spotify or streaming, keep one or two songs for vinyl, you could totally change the industry and make a living.
Interesting.
It's just a couple songs. You know,
right.
like
So-
use Spotify as a radio station, like used to back in the day, and then keep the body of your work for the vinyl.
Interesting.
See what happens.
So
you're not going to make the money back on streaming. So what's the risk?
But it would drive more
Interesting,
people
true.
to record stores.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or tour merch to buy.
Interesting. So you're saying, put your records
Let's say you
out
make
there,
a record, an
but
album.
don't put all the records on.
Yeah.
Don't put all the
All the
songs on
songs.
Yeah.
there.
Leave
Yeah.
one
I like
behind.
that.
Leave one back.
Right. Keep one
Yeah.
or two, one even, for vinyl, right? And release that first.
Yeah.
Roll your songs out on the record over
I see no
months.
downside to
I
this
love
strategy.
this.
Like it boosts sales of different formats. It gets people into the record stores where
Right.
they belong.
Yeah.
If they didn't have a record player, that for a Taylor Swift fan might buy their first record player. So
when I first opened the record store,
record
everyone was buying the records without a turntable. They were hanging on the wall. Now people are listening to the music, and it's like they're hearing a difference and experiencing something different.
Yeah.
So they're buying record players now.
I think that also, I wonder, actually, question, if I may.
Of course.
Ask a question
Please.
To my co-guest. Do you notice something post-pandemic where there's kind of, in the same way that I had that experience, are other people also like suddenly appreciating the tangibility, the tangible nature of what a record is?
I'm seeing a world, like a revolution in a way, of kids that don't want access to everything. It's it's the strangest thing.
It makes
they want to
so much
spend
sense, though. I
more
love
focused
that.
time and their money on select art, and they want to invest in those artists. I'm seeing it happen at a micro level right now.
It's
On my own
interesting.
research, because I own a record store. But
It's interesting that you say that. So my son, who's 13, it's all about streaming. We actually, our kids were supposed to be born on the same day, which is another connection we have.
Cosmic.
We both have kids the same
13-year-old
age.
boys.
He is totally an online person, a streamer. Everything, he listens to music on YouTube. He loves the new Tyler, the Creator album, and asked for me to get it for him on vinyl.
It's a sign that it's special, right?
And I was thinking, that's so interesting of all the things. Yeah. Like, what made you want to get that one on vinyl? Or is it, he's turning a corner?
Does he have a deeper connection to the artist, do you think? Is that why? Or
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's because it's cool, too.
Yeah. And maybe
Vinyl's
it
cool.
could be.
It always has been cool.
That, Tyler, the Creator, does do these amazing branding things. Like, I know, because I went to go look for it for his Christmas present, and the record store that I went to said that they only released a special green vinyl, and it's like $150, and it's hard to get, and you have to wait now for them to just release regular ones.
Smart.
And I was like, I don't know if I'm going to buy him the $150 one. But
It's weird. Like the industry's racing to catch up for the demand of vinyl. And you have people that have worked at record labels for 20 years that have never released a vinyl record until last year. They have no idea the print behind it, the artwork. You can't change your mind. It's like art before undo is a different process. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And so I think even the Tyler, the Creator, when that dropped, everybody found out about it the same day. The record stores, everybody. We're like, what's everybody talking about? It's cool there was a buzz and demand. As a record store owner, I wanted to have all the copies because it was so limited, but I didn't have any. But he created a buzz, and it's
and that
working.
could be why my son wanted
it's
it.
rare.
He
It's hard to
heard the
get.
buzz.
It means you're, I guess, the ultimate fan if you have it, all of that stuff. It's not as extreme as the Wu-Tang one record.
Ooh, tell me about that.
Martin Shkreli bought it,
Oh,
right?
yeah. They made one
Pharma
record
Bro.
that sold for a lot of money, and then the guy got in a financial issue. And the whole
Remember the Pharma Bro, Martin Shkreli, that
Right.
dickhead? He bought it.
Right.
But then he had to give it up or something happened.
Wait, explain a little
It's
bit
not-
what the one record is.
Well, they decided to put out one record, like one record, one physical copy.
They made music, but only one physical copy of it. Actually, it doesn't exist digitally either. If you want to hear this music, it's in a vault, and there's only one.
Right. And it went for like $1 million when it went. When it first went, sold for like $1 million, and then it went. It's gone. It's like the golden ticket.
Yeah.
But it's like a re-release or
No, it was a record they made. Then they just did the one. It
These
was
are
like
Wu-Tang
they
songs
just
that no one
went
has heard.
there. They went there, and it worked, and it like made all this
Wu-Tang.
demand. Clan.
the Wu-Tang Clan album that
That they
out.
put out they made huge demand for it,
Interesting.
And that was kind of the start of this resurgence. It's been taking a long time, but that was physical can mean something.
Right? Scarcity has value. Yeah.
Yeah, to me personally, not to like totally flip it, but I relate this a lot to like not cryptocurrency, but
I was thinking that one too. Anything valuable, any currency, any sort of like
wait, what's the art called again though? The
NFT.
NFTs.
Yeah.
I'm like that to me. I'm
Right.
like that's like streaming a song. I like and having a record. Like you have the record forever. You have a piece of art forever. Digital streaming, as we've seen, everything change along the way. Could not be there in a couple. I have already been talking to people about how you spend all this time making playlists, and for all we know, in a couple years, those streaming platforms will be something else. And you spent all these years making platforms and building your algorithm.
right.
Build your
Maybe for
record
nothing.
collection.
Yeah, you don't actually own it.
or make
It'll
art
last
that's
forever.
cool enough to.
Yeah.
It'll last
I have
generations.
no issue with the NFT in concept. I know a lot of artists. I think it's a cool concept. Give me something that I want to actually look at in that format.
Yeah.
And you got me.
Well, there you go.
The artwork's
that makes a difference too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add? We've kind of gone through, like I said, this is the smallest part of his collection.
The rock.
I like
collection.
the weird unknown stuff that we don't know about.
Yeah, that's great.
That's cool.
I
want to find out more about that.
Which is
And
interesting. I mean, again, there could be other stuff he had on Dad, or the stuff he had from the 60s. Don't know where that is. But
tape. A lot of people listened to reel-to-reel back then too.
Oh, wow.
A lot more
reel
than
to
you
reel.
would think. On the every home, a lot of homes had the reel-to-reel as part of.
Was that sort of like a flex, like of hi-fi audio quality?
Yeah, it was like you definitely had the
right. It's the best sound,
the best job on the street, and you had the good hi-fi gear, and you had the listening room. But a lot of tape machines were built into the furniture.
Well, I just wonder, knowing that your dad was writing the thing. I'm projecting a little bit, but as a musician, where I go through phases of like not listening for a long time, because when you're like making, sometimes listening is distracting. So clearly, your dad's experience was your dad's experience. But I wonder if some of the gaps in his collection are like mapping to his maybe not wanting to be distracted, or feeling like he's subconsciously ripping someone off, or that he can't be whatever, clearing his head for his own creativity is what I wonder about.
Since this is a 3-part series, this is only rock.
Yeah.
Then we're going to get into his R&B collection, which is episode 2.
Okay.
And episode 3 is jazz.
Okay. That's where the bulk is?
So
is that
different
will
size
give
crates?
you
Okay.
I will say the jazz is the bulkier section.
Interesting. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it shows up in that music, but in subtle ways. Because I think to the average listener's ear, it's a rock band that maybe becomes a pop band in the Cetera years.
Yes.
But for the most part, it's rock, and you hear blues in there, and a little psychedelia, and the jazz, maybe because of the horns.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a surprising chord here or there, which I would say is the jazziest thing I'm hearing personally.
Right.
I'm not hearing a lot of. There's harmonic content that probably comes from jazz, but it's not swing, it's not the instrumentation. It's a heavier rock R&B influenced band for the most part.
It's definitely a soup of that.
It's a soup of all of it,
which is
right.
great.
Yeah.
And it got my ear, always did, because I wasn't the biggest horns guy, personally.
Yeah.
I like, Cool in the Gang. There's certain things, but
Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Earth, Wind, and Fire. But in horns in general, in the rock world, I was always turn up the guitar.
Yeah.
But they were able to mix that all together. Really,
That is an interesting choice that they had horns, isn't it? I wonder where that came from, where that idea came from.
Yeah, I mean, I think from what I understand, it was just how they were hanging out in that era in the late 60s in Chicago. And my dad, playing guitar, even though he played other things, was hanging out with a group of guys that was at the school at DePaul University studying music.
Okay.
And at the time, if you were gigging for money, you were a cover band.
Right.
So in the late 60s, a lot of those cover bands needed to have horns.
Oh, I see. To get those, whatever, James Brown or whatever they were doing. Radio stuff,
or like
Motown
even
stuff.
Motown, or even like the Frank Sinatra-ish, like those kind of lounges that were also still happening. And then they would all play in each other's cover bands. And then slowly they kind of formed what became Chicago.
But what's interesting is because there's so much like jamming happening.
Yeah.
And these horn players there's 3 of them or whatever, at any given time. And they have parts that they play together in conjunction that are harmonized, that are prepared. So during the long freeform jams, like the I'm a Man, 5, 6, 7 extended solos, they're just kind of twiddling their fingers, maybe picking up some percussion. But that role in that type of band must be, your part is very specified, and it comes and it goes.
The interesting thing about the I'm a Man cover, though, is there is no horns in that song. In that version, they don't even have the horns. That's a tight. That is a tight.
In the live version.
In the live version,
I'm picturing the live version in my mind. You might be right though. I might be misremembering.
Yeah, it's a tight lock-in between Cetera on bass, Danny on drums, and my dad on guitar, which is the elements of a rock band.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then, the horn section just being like, we're going to play.
If they ever start jamming, though, it's like the horns are twiddling their thumbs or picking up a piece of percussion, doing like a Jan Brady,
I guess Tower had some of that going on, but there weren't many. They were like rock, big band sound, like mixing. It's not easy.
Yeah.
You have to have your space. You have to have your wait time, like you said.
Yeah.
You have to sit around with nothing to do. For
you got a book on
songs.
stage, maybe.
Exactly. Read the paper.
I mean, I think this is also something you've kind of lost in modern day live performances.
Right.
Is like each band member getting their time to jam for 5 minutes.
Oh yeah.
Especially horns, drums, and all that. Anyways, if you have nothing else to add. Anything else?
No.
Okay, we've kind of gone through that.
I want to do this every day. It was fun.
I know, this is fun. Thank you. Okay, thank you so much for being here.
Wait,
you
are we
guys
done?
are the best. Yes,
No.
that's what I'm saying.
I got time for more.
Oh my gosh. Well, you want to throw out some other questions? That's it, because we,
Maybe we should grill her.
I know. I wonder if your dad hung out with Mick Fleetwood at all. And that, 'cause he was so a staple here.
Of the scene,
Sunset.
LA.
I'm not sure because
Sound City, he had a room there, and played with so many people. If your dad lived here.
Yeah, I wonder, because in looking for people to interview for the documentary, my mom never mentioned that that's someone I should go talk to. So I don't think so. The Beach
feels
Boys,
like they would know each other.
I know, right?
Or like Al Jardine, maybe from the Beach Boys.
Yeah, the Beach Boys for sure.
They all worked studio a lot. They were in studios all the time here.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't.
And a lot of people played on other people's records. Like you were looking, do I know anybody that played on this? It was very common.
Cross-pollinating.
Yeah.
Session players. I mean, I don't know if you've seen. No, I won't bring it up because it's another show. So, fresh start.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, famously, all the yacht rock guys, right? It's like Toto's on every record.
Yeah.
You've got Steely. You got Tom Scott on every record. You got from Joni Mitchell all the way through to Michael Jackson.
This group, the immediate family, they're called. They were kind of like the go-to for like all Jackson Brown stuff, and it's a group of people that would hang out and play on each other's records all the time.
Yeah.
I think
Did your dad? You know the history of your dad's records? He's played on outside. Did he play on a lot of outside stuff like that?
As far as I know, he did not. I think that his time for that was like coming.
Yeah, makes sense.
His kind of like breaking.
Yeah.
Chicago played. They toured constantly from 1970 until he passed. And I think that was part of the struggle he was kind of having with himself, is this continuous machine that they were on, plus putting out a record.
And writing new records and that.
All the time.
And good ones.
Yeah, and I think he was looking for a break a little bit. I know that they were all going to try to do their own solo albums, that's one of the things Jim Gershie was trying to work on with them. And so I feel like that time was coming.
Right.
Like we were missing that with my dad. And I think that's also one of the reasons that he became an underrated guitarist, is because he didn't get to shine in his own right.
That's a big omission in this era where other people, Lukather, is that his name? Steve Lukather?
Steve, yeah.
Lukather, like all these other guitar players are guesting on other records and getting spread, they're being heard more. And it is an interesting point that you're making. He hadn't had that moment, hadn't come yet. But if it had, you're absolutely right. He would have been
and people
more
still
well-known.
associate him with the Chicago pop jazz band, pop rock jazz band, where he had his songs that you really heard him on. And then I think, like you were saying, it's interesting. They had this 3-part jazz horn section, but if you look, everyone got a chance to write a song. If you look in the Chicago
credits,
albums, they really allowed everyone to have a
the
song
different
that was
vocalists,
theirs. They wrote or put together. And so I always, speaking of which, I did, where did I put it? There is this album that Rhino put out, and these are more of the songs that are songs my dad wrote or played on. I mean,
more of his distinctiveness, like his voice and his vocals and his famous solos and stuff.
2 records.
Yeah, more of the things that he either wrote, played on, put his touch on vocally, or even though vocally you could also say like Color My World, which is something that is distinctly Terry Kath because of the vocal, but musically, no guitar. I mean, it's a very Jim Gershie song.
Interesting.
And apparently, according to the stories I got when I was making the documentary, he did not want to sing on that song.
Interesting. He got pushed into it by the producer.
Yeah, they were like, well, his voice will be phenomenal
Yeah.
on this song. And so the story he told is he was like, whatever, and just laid down in the studio and sang the song and was like, am I done? Can I leave now?
Begrudgingly sang it.
That's Gershio's story on Color My World. But yeah, so I think, he missed out on
Rhino's
that.
like, cool. Like so many artists have discovered music through Rhino releases.
For re-releases,
and all those
compilations.
packages that they've done.
Yeah.
Kept things alive.
Nuggets.
Yeah,
Right.
Nuggets, I have that. That's great.
Like that's like how I discovered all my SoCal psych garage flower
Is it Patti Smith's husband who did that?
I know this one doesn't want to go back.
Am I getting that right? Is Patti Smith's husband?
It was the
Lenny
producer of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And that's how, like, there's this band, The Seeds, that everyone that's in all rock bands of the 90s, everybody loves The Seeds. And because it was like, the music that we heard was like cool. It was like, but it didn't sound overproduced, but also felt like you could do it. You know?
Right. It was early punk rock.
Yeah.
Just like garage rock into
form a band
psych.
and do that.
Yeah.
Chicago, I was always like, man, how do they do it?
Yeah.
As a musician, you know,
Yeah.
like the band was so tight, and that's probably because they toured and played all the time, like you said.
And you're talking about like the tracks running. That was another thing Gershio did mention, is like how they recorded everybody and take different takes and have everyone in the studio sometimes at once recording on this massive. They had a beautiful, phenomenal recording studio at Caribou Ranch. But I think the first album might have been recorded in New York.
Okay. Caribou Ranch looked beautiful. Your documentary, which is so great, by the way. If everyone out there hasn't seen it, you need to. If you're watching this, definitely make sure you see. Is it Searching for Terry?
That was the original title. We're gonna fix this.
I remember that from the showing you did.
Oh yeah, the showing. Originally, I was calling it Searching for Terry. And then Searching for Sugarman came out, and then I looked it up, and there was a lot of searching for...
Which is a really cool doc, too.
Really great doc.
But you don't want to be, you want to be
But there was a lot of
distinctive.
documentaries called Searching for something or other, and I was like, okay, we got to change it. And we came up with the Terry Kath Experience, which is the play on Jimi Hendrix, and kind of tying that all in. Some people didn't like it. They thought it was too wordy.
Title?
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's great.
Well, when I got distributor, they wanted the word Chicago in there.
Okay.
So that it would, if you were Google searching, it would come up next. So now it's Chicago, the Terry Kath Experience.
Okay. It's a great documentary, and the footage from the ranch is what I'm picturing. It's really cool it looked amazing. It looked like an incredible experience, like a fun communal
for a lot of
music
people, that's
creative
their favorite
vibe.
Part.
Yeah.
And also, like, who has that?
Yeah.
To go to a place in the middle of the Rockies, live for 2 to 3 months, and record.
Yeah.
And
Listen, I grew up like reading these stories. I still to this day. It's like as a musician, I may never have the experience that we hear about. You know, even Nirvana going to the cold, whatever, Madison, whatever it was, like that idea of being sequestered, that idea of a group of people working together over a period of time with no distractions to make records.
Isolated,
I haven't had that experience. And most musicians I know, that's a real rarity. You need to have a budget. You need to have time. You need to have somebody maybe feeding you or feeding your kid. So that's such a like monumental, like Mount Olympus for that type of recording experience. It's the family and you're all cooking food for each other and there's, naked children running around kind of hippie style. It looks so incredible. It looked really amazing. So
there was the Caribou Girls.
Oh, I don't know about them. What did they do?
They were in charge of making sure, like, if you needed a special cocktail or special food, or if you needed something really specific, they were kind of like the runners. But then they were cute, so then people felt special, like, oh, the Caribou Girl is getting me my medicine I need from town, or whatever.
Okay. But it's not like the Plaster Casters, not that type of special.
I don't think so. Okay. I think, though, that there was probably a couple girls that ended up running off with some of the
but it was consensual.
It's like the grotto at the mansion, it sounds like.
This is a different time for many reasons.
It was the 70s. It was different.
But it's interesting. I mean, the amount of people that recorded there, I mean, this is its own documentary in itself, because it's like Michael Jackson recorded there at one point.
Really?
Yeah, John Lennon went and recorded there. Elton John recorded there.
Caribou Ranch. Wow.
I want to.
You should make that documentary. I'd love to see that. You did.
Yeah. And you know what happens? People are like, so you got the money to do this?
Oh.
And I'm like, no, that's why I'm talking to you. I need help. Like everyone's on board. Gershio, was into it, it's a touchy kind of like place to get Gershio, but we have a pretty good relationship.
Yeah.
He spoke on my documentary and not in the Chicago one, so
no, it's
and
I would watch it.
Honestly,
I paid my $7, $17.
I thought that it was just such a cool time, and there's nothing like that that I know of.
Yeah.
And things were different. Times were different. You did not have phones. You did not have internet. You did literally go to this property and disconnect from whatever was your reality, and that became it for a long time.
That sounds so idyllic, and great music is made that way. Yeah,
it was like that. It's Smart Studios, the studio, Butch Vig Studios.
Oh, that's Butch Vig's
in Madison, Wisconsin. I'm one of the producers of that documentary. But I worked out of there a lot. And it
Wait,
did
what's
have
the documentary?
It's called the Smart Studio
The
Story.
Smart Studio Story,
which is the Butch Vig and all the guys from Garbage actually formed the band.
I will watch that documentary tonight.
And it's really cool. It's the history of the recording studio. It's no longer around, and it had its whole cycle and. Actually, I was working out of that studio. That's how I found out Kurt Cobain died. Was a knock on the door, and the newscasters. I answered. I was the only one working at the studio. Butch actually was with the band auditioning Shirley Manson for Garbage, and knock on the door, and I opened it. Light flashed when the doorbell rang. No TVs on, no cell phone, and I opened it, and they're like, "Would you like to comment on the death of Kurt Cobain?" And I just slammed the door. Then I flipped on MTV, and because back then studios were expensive, and you came to work.
Yeah,
at least where I was at. I didn't have the Guns N' Roses third record budget, whatever. But you'd have to go work, and then it was focused time, and you don't want distractions. I mean, some maybe, but not TV and outside media. And you don't want to listen to what other bands were doing because you might get influenced or try and chase that subconsciously or any of that shit, And it is special to have those places where you can go and as far away as you can go and not be connected to those distractions. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it's definitely everyone's there for the same reason and capturing spirit. Awesome. There was no fix it later. It was kind of like
we're probably no accident that so many great records come out of that type of music making. Record production, I should say. It's probably no accident we get the Neverminds and the whatever is coming from that.
And you have a short period of time, and you have to be something good about a clock and deadlines.
Right.
With art.
Right.
In terms of music producing, what have you touched?
Oh, I've worked on so many different things my entire life, but I produced. I have platinum records that were meant to be demos with Smashing Pumpkins.
Oh, amazing.
Early on, doing demos for Siamese Dream that Butch Vig produced.
Love that record.
We did that out in Marietta, Georgia, outside of Atlanta, trying to get away from Chicago craziness to that point.
And you said were you married to Darcy at this time? Or this
Darcy's
is before
my the bass player from Smashing Pumpkins, original bass player is my ex-wife. And a lot of the things that ended up being really fan favorites, the deep cuts, were never actually meant to be, at the time, be heard by the fans. They were demos for Siamese Dream.
Interesting.
That didn't make the cut. They didn't even get recorded, some of them, for the record.
Wow.
Because Billy was writing a lot of music then. And then the band became so famous during that record. Virgin was like, we need another record, but we want you to stay on the road because we're selling so many records. We need another record. I remember being on the tour bus with Billy and Darcy, and he starts to listen. He's like, we should put out those demos we did. And that includes his cover of Landslide, which became a huge
I have
radio
this record.
hit.
What is it
Pisces
called again?
Iscariot.
Yeah, I have this record.
And Starla is the song. A song called Starla is the one that I was talking about when the fire truck went by and I left the window open.
Oh, wow.
And fans talk about it all the time. Was it subliminal? It was a secret message, or
just the microphone captured.
It just happened
reality.
to be the right key to the song.
No way.
And it was, of course, the quietest part of the song too. So it kind of fades. It sounds like it fades in and out.
There was just a window open and an ambulance
and the fade
went by.
in and out is just the ambulance driving
Beautiful.
by. Yeah, those moments
accident.
are awesome.
As they say.
That was something I worked on. Miley Cyrus records and all different things. But the Pumpkins to me was the probably the most memorable and important for me because it was all happening then. The later stuff with Miley is awesome, but I had kind of built my career by then. But the excitement of not totally knowing what you're doing and having a little period of time and very little money to do it did make for some exciting moments in music, Not having the resources.
Chicago connection too.
Yeah,
one of
Chicago.
One of Chicago's biggest.
Smashing Pumpkins will always be the second biggest band out of Chicago.
What do we consider Cheap Trick?
Rockford, Illinois. They're from the suburbs of Chicago.
Yeah. They don't count.
And probably the most underrated rock band of all time.
But they're from
Rockford. But they're from Rockford. Yeah.
And what do you play? You play as well?
I play drums.
Drums.
Yeah, main thing.
I play drums were my first instrument, and I play other things poorly, but enough to record them and then manipulate them later.
And make it all sound good.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. If you guys want to keep chatting, we could, but we could also wrap it up. It's so
It's your show, baby.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, they're meant to be kind of short and sweet. All right.
Awesome.
I'll do the closing now.
Okay.
I would just like to say thank you so much for being here. You guys are the best. I feel super honored that you guys came and did this and took time out of your schedules. How do listeners find you?
Well, you can find me on all the socials. I'm Luxxury with 2 X's, Luxxury. So Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, etc. Spotify, my music is on there too.
Yeah.
And I have a show called One Song on SiriusXM. It's a weekly podcast taking a deep dive into one song at a time.
Yep. And all your favorite jams ever. It's a really good listen. Highly recommend. And Kerry, where can listeners find you?
Well, I'm at Studio Dog, like DOG, not like Snoop Dogg. Studio Dog is my personal Instagram or whatever. It's public. And then I have Licorice Pizza Records.
Of course.
.com and Licorice Pizza Records.
And
Instagram.
people can buy vinyl.
I want Licorice Pizza, but there's someone squatting it. They want like $1 million.
Oh, for oh my God.
So we're LicoricePizzaRecords.com.
But they don't have anything on it. They're just trying to hold it for
they
you.
bought it a long time ago thinking someone would want it someday. They're
Hate that.
squatting on it. I know. But
And people can
Licorice
go online
Pizza
and
Records.
buy vinyl if you want.
Pretty much
Want to
anything
support.
that's for sale that's released anywhere you can find at LicoricePizzaRecords.com, or you can come in our store in Studio City, California.
Yeah.
Ventura Boulevard and Laurel Canyon.
And then
Every Tom Petty song ever, I like to say.
yeah. And then you have a record press.
We have a record press, and if you'd like to get your records pressed, LicoricePizzaRecords.com. There's a page for pricing, or call us.
Do you do
We like a phone call.
anything, or do you stick with a specific genre?
No,
or
it's a minimum of 100, because less than that, it's just to get into it. It's just
Yeah,
cost
what's the
involved,
point?
so it doesn't make sense. Your record would be too expensive per record, but anywhere from 100 to 100,000.
As long as your money's green.
Right? And then we can talk next episode about the Florida. It used to be
I'm
called
super
Final
down.
Vinyl, and all of the dance hall and
I need to know.
reggae and ska and tough gong and Joe and everybody. It was
I would
all
listen to
pressed
that
there.
podcast.
Yeah.
I like
Absolutely.
that you're saying the next I have a feeling that like you're probably going
We'll
to
be
have
back.
him now on your podcast.
Got to. Got to.
Anyways, thank you so much for listening and
Thanks for
tuning
having us.
in and being on the show. This has been the Wax Matrix Podcast, the Terry Kath Vinyl Experience. This is part 1 of 3. Tune in for the other episodes. Please visit terrykath.com. We have all the information there for merch, the documentary, the playlists for these episodes, and links so you can just click and go purchase music or listen to these fine men speak more in depth about music and whatnot. Lastly, in the comment section of this page or wherever you're listening, or you can find the Terry Kath fan group on Facebook, let's start a discussion about the last record that you purchased, which was my first question for you all. For me, it was the MF Doom vinyl that just came out. It was like an MF Doom double vinyl. Instagram got me on that one because the branding was so good. And I was like, I have to get this on vinyl. What was the last time you went to a record store, I guess online, and purchased something? Even though I would say going into a record store does have a certain experience that
It's
you
different.
can't take away.
It's different.
Yeah, it's way different than buying online. So
It's better.
I'd like to just hear everyone else's last records they bought, and let's compare and talk more deeper into collecting records and keeping it alive. Thank you for tuning in.
Yay. Is this the part where we clap? Yay.
Sure.
Ooh, ah, feel the bass.